Did you know that the probability of finding 2 yolks in one egg is 1 in 1,000? It is considered an extremely rare phenomenon. This morning, while making breakfast, I pulled out an egg. I noticed it was a little heavier than normal, and I cracked it open, and I had 2 yolks. This has never happened to me before, but it has happened to my mom once before. Now, if I were to look at the spiritual significance of 2 yolks, I mean, eggs in themselves represent fertility, the birth, the creation of something new. So there's definitely a spiritual significance here of a rebirthing, a birthing. Maybe one of you are expecting twins way out there somewhere. It definitely signifies new beginnings and creative endeavors. It also means, I know in the Chinese tradition, that excuse me, I had to sneeze. From what I'm told in Chinese traditions, in Chinese folklore, finding 2 yolks in one egg means that your receivings of blessings are going to be even greater than you had anticipated. So the outcome is going to be even greater than the expected outcome. And of course, in Nordic traditions, 2 yolks represents that there could be a death in the family. Now, the death could be you yourself in terms of a spiritual rebirthing as the ego dies, or perhaps even, I'm sure in their sense, they represented traditions that probably did mean an actual death in the family. And again, in my eyes, I consider that could be a death of any sort, not necessarily a physical death. But anyways, I found 2 yolks in one egg this morning, which was really interesting because last night I was listening to a preacher before I fell asleep. And whether you are religious or not, people who follow Jesus tend to hold a certain light. I also believe that there is something that happens to us when we listen to gospel or even when we read the Bible. It's a piece of literature, and it's a spiritual piece of literature. It's like reading the Bhagavad Gita. There's just a tremendous amount of wisdom in these pieces of literature. And when you hear people preach those pieces of literature, or at the very least, preach from spirit, from the heart, it resonates in us. This is why I believe gospel is so popular. It does something to our bodies that most people aren't even aware of. When I am listening to somebody preach, even talk scripture, or even just talk from spirit, whether that be in a retreat, meditation, or whatnot, it really resonates with your soul, because that's word at its purest form, I believe. Anyways, this preacher was talking about yoke, Y-O-K-E, not Y-O-L-K-S. Yes, I'm in the parks right under the Niagara helicopters. And you can see it right there. So, he was talking about yoke and how spirit was going to release the yoke from you, the person who was feeling these burdens. And what it actually means is the yoke is the rein that holds the horses or the animals, and it refers to burdens. So he was talking about how spirit was going to remove the yoke for certain individuals at this moment in time because they had been carrying heavy burdens. And then this morning I found 2 yolks, Y-O-L-K-S, in my egg. And I just thought that was kind of ironic. But what was interesting, he went on to say one thing that actually really hit me. You know how there are sometimes phrases of a song, lines of a book, somebody says something to you in passing that really strike you, that really hit you where you need to hear it? This was one of those sentences. The sentence, or phrase rather, was as follows, and I do believe he was referring to Isaiah 55, but the phrase is as follows: where have you been giving that has not been bearing you fruit? Right? Where have you been sowing that has not been giving you fruit? Where have you been giving? Where have you been giving your energy? Where have you been giving your money that has not been providing you fruit? That has not been providing you nourishment, abundance, reciprocation. And that phrase struck me. It was just one of those moments that pierced my soul. And we've all had these experiences where we hear these phrases, these lines in a song, a word, somebody says something to us in a conversation, a stranger randomly says the right thing at the right time, and it just hits you in ways that words don't normally hit. And that's because spirit is talking to us through language. And this phrase, where have you been giving that is not providing you fruit, or that is not bearing you fruit. And this phrase, where have you been giving, that is not bearing you fruit, stopped me dead in my tracks last night. I actually started bawling because I realized this has been my entire year, if not few years, if not last 10 years. Where have I been giving in my marriage that was not providing me fruit? Where have I been given in my work, in my employment agencies, that has not been providing me fruit? Where have I been given in this living situation right now that has not been providing me fruit, that has not been providing me nourishment, abundance? Where have I been giving my money that has not been providing me a reciprocation of abundance, of return on that investment? Where have I been giving my energy, my love, that has not been providing me fruit? And I don't know if this is resonating with anybody out there right now, but it really resonated with me because it made me realize I have been giving so much of my time and energy to things that have not been giving me fruit. I am in this situation because of my own choices. Yes, we all know we have to take accountability for the choices we make for ourselves, but there are also external circumstances that happen. And when those external circumstances happen, they can increase the difficulty or the burden. They put burdens on you that you didn't choose, but that are yours to walk through or to carry. But this doesn't mean that we need to carry them for our entire lives. And I think one way we can release that burden is to really understand, oh my gosh, the car license plate in front of me says 333. I just noticed that. But we can understand how to relieve those burdens if we really understand, where have we been given? Where have we been giving that has not been bearing fruit for us? It's so simple. Because technically, every time you give of yourself, whether it be in terms of your employment, your energy, your career, to your family, you should be bearing fruit from that, whether it's the immense amount of unconditional love from your relationships, your children, your partner, praise at work, promotions, increases in income. And even if you are starting your own business or investing in your own self-employment, there needs to be some kind of fruit bearing that happens. Because if you do not have fruit that is grown, if what you are doing is not bearing any fruit, what it becomes is your outtake becomes way more than your intake. And there's only so much of that the human psyche can hold on to before it starts to believe it is a failure, it is not achieving anything in life. And that's not to say that you aren't doing anything wrong. That's not to say that you aren't trying your hardest. That just means to say that you are giving and planting, you are sowing where you are not bearing anything in return for your efforts. And if you are in a situation where you have been constantly sowing, planting, creating, and you have not received any fruit from those labors yet, then it's really time to seek different soils. It's really time to plant your ideas, your creativity, and your energy elsewhere. And this hit me really hard because today I realized I have been giving so much energy into my space where I am right now, so much time and effort into rekindling a relationship or nurturing a relationship, a father-daughter relationship, and it is not bearing me any fruit. My marriage did not bear me any fruit. In fact, I ended up with nothing at the end of my marriage, as did he. My careers have not bore me any fruit. And even my business, actually, at the moment, when I started my business, it was not bearing me any fruit. So when this happens, we need to stop and question and ask ourselves, is this the right thing for me? And if it's not, you do have to find your fertile ground.